someone who is willing to work for a top consulting firm in the world into the social space and are wondering how do these firms use Excel, SQL and Power BI to solve their day-to-day tasks. Like what even is the use of these tools? So friends, when I was in my final year of my undergraduate, I got an opportunity to apply for an internship which was being conducted by BCG. Now I was fortunate enough that my resume got shortlisted for the round 1. Now into the round 1 they had given some case study questions and I had to solve these questions using Microsoft Excel. This was an internship which was being conducted collaboratively by BCG, that is Boston Consulting Group, into collaboration with Government of Jharkhand. So I had to work as a government consultant for the education department of Government of Jharkhand. So the intention of this video is to just share as much knowledge as I can, and also so that you can get an idea whenever you are getting such opportunity. Now I won't be sharing the exact questions which were asked to me. I had done some modifications into the questions, into the data sets, but believe me, 99% of the concepts and the techniques which I had used to solve these questions, they remain the same. And these questions are also not at too much advanced level, but I just wanted to share this information that how do we use these tools into the real case scenarios. And this is a very interesting case study. I believe you will learn a lot from this video, so do like this video and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And I'll be bringing more such videos into the real case scenarios interviews. Now before moving into this video to solve all the questions, the question whether I was selected for this internship or not. So unfortunately I was not selected for this internship, but this particular assignment was just a sub part of the assignments that were given. So friends, let us quickly move to my screen and let's start solving the question. Friends, the questions were totally based onto the real case scenarios, onto the education department of the government. So friends, let us quickly move to the questions. So you can see onto my screen I have two data sets which were provided to me. Just give a brief overview of all these data sets. Let us understand these data sets from the questions which they had provided. There were three different tasks which was provided to me. So the number one task was wholly dependent on to the Excel problem solving skills. So I would be sharing these particular questions to you. So friends, you can see onto my screen the task one. So I would just quickly read out the question. It is very much simple. The question says the Principal Secretary of Department of School Education and Literacy has asked you to tell him whether the state's BRP, CRP officials are working effectively on ground. So he has asked me to create a ranking for the 24 districts of Jharkhand on the basis of effectiveness of BRP and CRPs. So let us come to the term like who are these BRPs and the CRPs. So BRP stands for Block Resource Personnel and CRP stands for Cluster Resource Personnel. Now what are their work? So these are the officials on ground tasked with regular monitoring of schools. These are some of the government officials which have the duty to go on ground onto the government schools and check whether everything is maintained properly or not. So this infrastructure is good or not, the food which is being provided is good or not. So these are the tasks of these government officials. The infrastructure, attendance, quality of teaching and various other factors which determines the effectiveness of the education department of Government of Jharkhand. I would quickly summarize the question for you again. So the government schools which are present into the Jharkhand, so there are these officials such as the BRPs and CRPs. So their designations are BRPs and CRPs. So their day-to-day task involves going to the on-ground field and checking the schools premises regarding the infrastructure, their midday meal and the education quality which is being provided and various other things. Now as a government consultant, my task is to rank all these 24 districts which are present in Jharkhand according to the effectiveness of these BRPs, CRPs, their work. To which of the district of Jharkhand is the quality of education the most good, and I had to provide the similar ranking to all these other districts, and I would be providing these rankings basis the effectiveness of the work which is done by the BRPs and the CRPs officials. He further suggested, the principal secretary, he is suggesting me to look at the effectiveness of BRPs or CRPs in any district. So I would just look into three parameters that can determine the effectiveness of these BRPs and the CRPs. So the number one parameter is the average number of visits done per BRP CRP in the month of August. So I will be preparing this report for the month of August. So definitely I have just the data for the month of August. The number one factor is the average number of visits done per BRP CRPs in the month of August. The second number factor is the percentage of total registered BRP CRPs officials who were active in the month of August. Number three factor is the percentage of total schools covered per district in the month of August. So basis these three factors will be determining the rank of all the districts which are present into the Jharkhand state. Now you can see I have this data set here, so I have been just be provided some help from their side to understand this data set better. So you can see registered BRP CRP. So this is present into the next sheet. I will just open the next sheet. So you can see the column name here. The number one column is district name. Are all the districts which are present into the Jharkhand state. So the number two column is the registered BRP CRPs. So these are the total number of BRPs and the CRPs officials registered for that district. So let's say for Bokaro, so in Bokaro there are 154 total registered BRP CRPs. Similarly for Garhwa there are 108 total BRP CRPs. The second number factor is the total number of schools. So this is definitely very much clear that these are the total schools which are present in this district, and these are the factors which we need to calculate as per whatever the principal secretary is telling us. So you can see three empty columns here, column E, F, G, and these are the three columns which we need to fill whichever the principal secretary is telling us, and on the basis of these three columns we will be calculating the rank of all the districts which are present into the Jharkhand. Friends, I have been given the information on how I would go on calculating these factors. So what are the number of BRP CRPs who visited schools? So they have been providing me information like number of active BRPs in the period. The second factor is the number of visits done by BRP CRPs. So this is the number of visits to schools done by BRP CRPs in the selected period. You can see the factors on which we can measure the effectiveness of the BRPs and CRPs. So they have provided a certain formula to us, like how we can go on calculating these different factors. So number of visits done by BRP CRPs, so that is the number of visits to schools done by BRP CRPs in the selected period. 5 is the number of schools visited by BRP CRPs. We need to calculate this, and how we'll be calculating this? So we'll be calculating by unique number of schools visited in the selected period. So one school may be visited more than once in a month by BRP CRPs. They have provided a condition here that one school may be visited many times in a month by any BRP or CRP officials. The number 6 and the 7 columns, we just need to ignore this. So it is written here. It is just the information on the number of schools visited till date and the number of schools not visited till date, and they have been providing information that during calculation, whenever we are getting the percentage value is greater than 100%, just consider it to be 100. Now we will be telling me, Ashutosh, from where we will be getting this data from. So we have this second data set available to us, and we'll be using this data set to calculate all the other different factors or the effectiveness factors which were provided by the principal secretary to me. So you can see these three factors here I'll be calculating, and the formula on how we'll be going to calculate these three factors was provided to me. So I'll be using this particular data set to calculate all the three different factors which were given to me. So you can see these three factors. Just quickly give an overview of this particular data set also. So into the column A, I have all the districts name present into Jharkhand. Into the column B, these are all the blocks name. Into the column C, these are the ID or the code for all the schools. So you can see these are the schools name which are here. So for example, these are all the schools name, and they all have a unique ID. So for example, these, if I'll just look into these two rows, so these two rows have the same school name and they have also the same ID. These are all the unique IDs for the schools. Into the column E, these are the IDs for all the government officials or the BRP and the CRP officials and their designation. And into the column G, these are the visiting dates onto the date on which the official they had visited into these schools. For example, this particular ID BRP official they had visited into this particular date. This ID BRP or CRP official had visited on this particular date. Now you would tell me, Ashutosh, this does not look like a date kind of thing, and this is quite weird. Yes, and that was also a task, like you need to figure everything like from yourself, like how do we need to convert this into a date thing. So I would just go to this particular tab here and I would convert this into a short date, and you can see the date has been converted, and this is the data just for the month of August. Okay, so they have given me for just to calculate the data for the month of August. So from my side I would just be clear that the data set which I have is just for the month of August. So to check that, I would just do a simple analysis here. So if the data set present into this day sheet is just for the month of August or not, so I would just calculate the month from all these dates here. And I would just drag this particular thing to the very last, and I will fill the for the entire column. So you can see the month has been filled for each and every date. I would try to remove the duplicates from here. So I would do a simple remove duplicates. I would just continue with the current selection. I would remove duplicates from here. So you can see we have the data set just for the month of August because we are just getting the 8. So that is pretty much clear, because from our side we just have to remain very much conscious whenever we are solving these kind of different kind of data analysis tasks. So these were the very first kind of different things which I need to check into any of the data set, because we just need to calculate the data for the month of August. So let's quickly move to the very first questions which have been provided to me, and that is number of BRP CRPs who visited schools. So how do we go on calculating this particular thing? So the formula has been provided, or the procedure or the steps which I need to take to solve this particular equation. So number of BRP CRPs who visited schools is the number of active BRP CRPs into the period. So friends, how do we go on identifying like which of the column which we need to focus? Can we say like the number of unique IDs which are present into the column E for each of the unique BRP or the CRP officials, because every person who is working as a BRP or a CRP official, they'll be having a unique ID with them, and this ID is pretty much unique for each of the official. So we'll be using this particular column, which is column E, to calculate the number of active BRPs and the CRP officials into the period. Let us see for each of the districts how many unique IDs are present into the column E. So even if the BRP or the CRP officials, they have done a single visit, that would be counted as an active BRP or the CRP official. So we just need not to calculate the number of counts or the number of visits, the number of BRPs or the CRP officials they have done. We just want to get the distinct number of BRP or the CRP officials who were active into the month of August. So let us see how to go on creating the pivot table. So first of all, I would just need to select the entire data set, and then I would need to go on to this insert onto the pivot table. So I would need to click onto this option, add this data to the data model, and we'll be knowing why we are clicking this option. Then I would click onto OK. So into the very first, into the row, I would just drag the total number of districts, and into the ID I would drag into the values. What we have got here is the total count of these ID, like the ID, let's say 1, it is occurring how many times into the column, but we need not to get this. We just want to get the distinct count of the IDs. We don't want to get the total count of the IDs, because even if the official, they have done n number of visits, 50 visits, 100 visits, we don't care. We just care onto the unique number of active BRP CRP officials into the given period. So for that, I would just do a distinct count here. So you would go to value field settings here, and into the last you can see the distinct count option. I would click onto the OK. So you can see I've got the distinct count, number of distinct counts of all these IDs which are present into the column. So for, let's say for Bokaro districts, the total number of active BRP CRP officials were 143. Similarly for Latear, the number of active, or Kodarban, the number of active BRP CRP officials were 31. These were some of the numbers onto the active BRP CRP officials. Let us move to the second number factor to calculate the number of active BRP CRP officials effectiveness, and that is number of visits done by BRP and the CRPs. Also, before doing that, you can see we need to fill this particular thing here. So let us go on filling this particular thing here. So I would just do a simple, I would copy this data somewhere, I would paste this, I would paste this as a simple values, and then if I need to paste all these numbers here, number of BRP CRPs who visited schools, I would do a simple VLOOKUP here to get all those numbers. Apply the VLOOKUP onto the district name column. And what is my table array? So my table array is the data set which I copied to the second row 0, because I want to get the approximate match, and I would hit enter. So you can see I've got the numbers for the month of August. I would just drag it to the very last. You can see I've got some NA values here, even if Paschimi Singhbhum and Purvi Singhbhum was present into my data set, because the dash was not present in between the words, as you can see here. So that is why I did not get the match for these two entries here. So let us fill these entries with I would just manually write this, because there are not lot many of data sets here. So that is why we could write here manually. Even if the data set was large, I would have figured out something to work here, but we can just write it manually here. So for Paschimi Singhbhum it is 147, so I would just write this 147, and for the next one I would also write 136. And the number one factor on which how do we calculate the effectiveness of the BRPs and the CRP officials have been completed. Let us move to the second number factor, and that is the number of visits done by the BRPs and the CRP officials. So how has the principal secretary have told us, how do we go and calculate this? So the number of visits done by BRPs and the CRP officials is the number of visits to schools done by the BRPs and the CRP officials in the selected period. So the period is August, that is quite okay, and we just need to calculate the total number of visits to the school done by the BRPs and the CRP officials, and this time we would need to calculate the total number of counts. Here we need not to focus onto the total number of distinct count, because we are concerned with the total number of visits which are done by the BRPs and the CRP officials. We don't want to get the total number of unique BRP CRPs officials who had visited the schools. So here is the use of the count function here. As you can see from the formula which has been provided to us, so number of visits done by BRP CRPs is the number of visits to schools done by BRP CRP, and each row you can see here into this data sheet that constitute to just a visit. So we can say the total number of visits which is done into the month of August is close to 62707 is the total number of rows which are present into this data set, that is 62706 number of visits, total number of visits has been done, and we'll be dividing all these visits basis onto the district level. So we'll be using the same pivot table, and I've just done a simple count here. So I would just copy the same data set into however we done into the previous problem. So I would just do a simple paste here, that's all is required. This time I would add a dash here. How I would have solved this problem if the data set was very much large. So I would have to go to this data set here, I would do a Control H, and wherever I would find this Purvi Singhbhum, I would replace this particular thing with Purvi, and I would give a dash, and that's all. I would click onto the replace all, so it would replace all these Purvi Singhbhum with this particular thing with a dash. So now our data set is very much small, so we can work around like this also. Apply the VLOOKUP function, and let us do the same thing here also. So I would just do a simple VLOOKUP, and we need to look up onto the district again, and our column is this. I would do 20, that's all. I would drag this to the very last here. I made a separate video onto the Excel shortcuts, so I'm just using the keyboard shortcuts to work around here, and that saves a lot of amount of time. So if you haven't checked out that particular video, I would highly recommend you to check out that particular video also. Let us go on to calculate the number 3 factor and the last factor, on which how do we calculate the effectiveness of the BRP and the CRP officials. So the number of schools visited by the BRPs and the CRPs, so the formula they have provided is the unique number of schools visited into the selected period into that particular district. So for example, into this data set, if I would give an example, a simple example, so each school has a unique name and a unique ID. So the unique ID of the school is this particular thing. And as the government or the principal secretary has told to us that a school can be visited 5 times, 6 times, n number of times into the given month, into the given period, but we just want to get the unique number of schools which were visited by the government officials. So we just want to get the distinct count of all these IDs which are present here. So even if this particular ID is occurring 5 times into this row, that means that 5 times this school has been visited into the month of August by the officials. We just want to get the count as 1, because we just want to get the unique number of counts or the unique schools which were visited. So let us see how to calculate this also, and we would just follow the same procedure. I would need to click onto this, add this data model. I would need to drag this district to here. Either I can go with the ID of the school or the name of the school. So I would prefer going with the name of the school because both are unique into each other respect. So I would go value field setting and I would do a distinct count here. I would click OK. So you can see, for example, in Bokaro district, total number of unique schools which were visited by the government officials was 1466. Similarly for all the other districts as well. Copy paste this data somewhere and I would apply a simple VLOOKUP here also, and I would transfer this data to my next data set. I would just apply a simple VLOOKUP here. Table array, I would just select this one, 2 0, that's all is required. I will need to provide a dash here just to everything I am doing is correct or not. So I would drag this formula to the very last. You can see how quickly is the work being done by using the Excel shortcut. So I would highly recommend you to check that video out. So you can see after all these calculations which was instructed by the principal secretary, I've got all the different 3 values into my data set here. Now how do we go on calculating the rank? But before that we would need to convert this into percentage value, because principal secretary has told us that percentage of total registered BRP CRPs who were active into the month of August. So into one of the columns I have the total number of registered BRP CRPs, and into the column E I have the count of the total number of BRP CRPs officials who had visited all these particular districts. I want to convert this into the percentage value. So let us see how to do this. So I would just do this here only. So to get the percentage value, I would go to this particular cell, divided by registered BRP CRP officials, and that's all. I would fill this formula into the entire column itself. And they have also provided a condition that wherever we are getting the value as greater than 100%, we just need to convert this into 100%. So let us do this. So if this is greater than 1, then 1, otherwise E6 to C6. I would drag this formula to the very last. So you can see all those values which was greater than 1 has been converted to 1. That is what was instructed by the principal secretary. Let us move to the next condition also. The last condition was the percentage of total schools covered per district in the month of August. So not necessary that if there was 10 schools into the district, the total number of 10 schools will be visited. So we want to get the total number of percentage of the schools which were visited by the government officials. So let us see how to calculate this. So you can see into one of my column I have the total number of schools and the total number of schools, unique schools which were visited by the government officials into the column G, and we need to divide both of these particular columns. So let us see how to do this. I need to divide by the total schools, and if this particular value is greater than 1, then keep it as 1, otherwise return the same value. That's it. And let us control D this. So we see we have got both these factors and they are converted into the percentage value. So let us convert this into the percentage value also. So you can see I've converted this into the percentage value. So I would rename these columns also. This is the percentage of the schools visited. So this is the number 1 factor which we have got, and this particular factor was percentage of officials visiting the school, percentage of officials visiting school. So you can see I've got two factors on which I want to calculate the effectiveness of the BRPs and the CRP officials. So we have got these two factors here: percentage of total registered BRP CRP officials who were active in the month of August. So this particular thing is we calculated onto the column J. Of total schools covered per district in the month of August, this is into the column K. And the very last option, or the very first option, which was instructed by the principal secretary, was the average number of visits per BRP CRPs into the month of August. To calculate the average number of visits done by per BRP CRP into the month of August. For this I would need to divide both of these columns, that is column F and column E. And that is because we just want to get the number of visits done by a single BRP or a CRP official. So we have the total number of visits into the month of August, and we have the total number of BRP CRP officials who were active. So we just need to divide both of these columns here. So let us get the average number of visits per BRP CRP officials. So average number of visits per official. So I will just write this. To get this particular value, I would go on to divide the number of visits done by the BRP CRP officials into the month of August by the number of BRP CRP officials who visited the schools. I will not divide this number with the total number of BRP CRP officials. I would just divide the total number of visits by the number of BRP or the CRP officials who were active into the month of August. So we are getting this number from the column E. So I would just divide this number, and you can see I've got this number here. So I would just drag this formula to the very last, and you can see close to, for example, into the district Bokaro, one official is visiting close to 23 schools, or the 23 visits are being done by one of the officials. Finally, we have got of these three factors onto the basis on which I'll be preparing a report to the principal secretary. I'll be providing a ranking to him onto all the districts which are present into the Jharkhand state according to the work which is done by the government officials. The number one condition I have got into the column L, the percentage of total registered BRP CRPs who were active into the month of August, I have got in column J, and the percentage of total schools covered per district into the month of August I have got in column K. So from this particular data, I would at last go on to calculate the rank. So I would just copy this data somewhere, and onto that particular new data sheet I would work. So I will transfer all the desired data which I require to calculate the ranking of the districts to a new worksheet, because I don't want to play around into this sheet only. So I would just copy this data somewhere into my new sheet. I will do a Control N, Control V, and I would paste this as values. I would remove all these unnecessary gaps here, and I will be pasting that particular data set also here. So let us do that also. So okay, I would just simply paste this, do Control C, paste this as values. So great, we have got all these conditions here. To prepare the report, I would modify this a bit. I'll make this as a table so that it looks nice to me. So calculate the rank, they had not instructed us regarding anything on how to go about calculating the rank. The principal secretary had not provided any information onto that. So let us see, it was totally dependent onto the problem solving skills of the candidate on how he goes on solving this particular problem. Now the approach which I took, I don't know if this was correct or not, but I felt like this was pretty much correct. So let us see how to calculate the rank of all these districts. So you can see into both of these columns I have into the percentage value, and into the column D I have into a simple decimal number value, and into the column A I have the district name. So you can consider this situation as something like, in column A I have all the students name, in column B, C, D these are all the different subjects on which the students has been marked. So I'll be calculating or accumulating the sum of all these different three factors, and basis on that I'll be calculating the rank. Now if you have a different approach on how do we go on calculating the rank, you can write your approach into the comment box of this particular video. It can help me as well as other candidates also who are preparing for different roles. First of all, I would go on to calculate the average of both these percentage values which are present here, because these are present into the percentage terms and this is present into the decimal number terms. So let us go on calculating the average value. So you can see I've got the average values, and I would add this value with the value which is present into the column D. So I would just have a sum of both these values here, and you can see I've got this sum basis of this particular column, and this can be considered as something like the total number of marks which are present into three of the subjects. And on to the basis on this, I'll be calculating the rank of all these districts using the rank function. So calculate the rank, I'll be using the rank function here. So I would need to provide the number and the range on which I want to calculate the rank, and then I would hit enter, and you can see I've got the rank value for each of these states. I would hide this particular column also, and I would rename this column as the rank column. So ranking of the state has been provided. So you can see the principal secretary had told to us the metrics on which we need to calculate the rank, and first of all we went on to calculating these different metrics separately, and then we are accumulating all these three different metrics and getting the rank finally for each of the districts. Let us sort the entire data set according to the ranks. I would go to sort and filter, and then I would sort from largest to smallest, or let us sort this from smallest to largest because rank 1 district should be onto the top. So you can see the Khuti district is the number 1 district for the effectiveness of the BRPs and the CRP officials into the Jharkhand state. The intention of this video is to just give you a real case scenarios condition on which how we are using Excel and solving real case problems. This was my internship task for Boston Consulting Group, and this was a very interesting one, and I hope you had also enjoyed this and you learned quite a different lot of things from this particular video. So do like this video into huge numbers, and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't, because I'll be bringing more such videos, more such lessons into the video ahead. So friends, meet you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye.